Hi, my name's Vincent. At my sister's wedding. They sat me alone by the door. They served me leftovers, while everyone else had champagne and caviar. Then she leaned in, smiling, and said, "You should feel honored." But it wasn't just the food. It was the years of silence, the exhibitions they sabotaged, the photos they stole, the love they pretended was mine. Until I stopped being useful. They dressed me in shame for decades. But what happens when the forgotten daughter brings the truth to the party? I read the message twice, then a third time. "Can you shoot my wedding?" "Of course, for free. Your family." It came from Jessa, casually tossed into our barely there text thread like she was asking me to pick up milk. I stared at it, thumb hovering over the reply button, but I didn't type a word. It wasn't just what she said. It was everything underneath. That familiar current of entitlement, of being needed only when it served someone else's storyline. I didn't respond. 2 days later, the phone rang. Mom's name flashed across the screen. I should have let it go to voicemail, but I didn't. I pressed answer and said nothing. "Vincent," she began, syrupy and tight. "I know you got Jess's message. It's important to her, to all of us. You do understand what family means, don't you?" I stayed silent. "I mean, after everything we've done for you, this is the least you can do. We're not asking much. Just show up. Be supportive. Like a sister should." She hung up before I could respond. Or maybe she never expected me to. Show up, be supportive. The irony tasted bitter. I arrived at the venue early. Alone, of course. No date, no +1. Just my small navy dress and a quiet kind of armor I'd learned to wear around them. The St. Augustine Church looked like a page torn from a wedding magazine. White roses, soft gold drapery, floating petals along the aisle. Perfect. Too perfect. It didn't belong to people like me, even if we shared blood. At the check-in desk, the woman with the headset and tight smile flipped through a list. "Name?" "Vincent Ward." She paused. "Oh, you're not." Her eyes scanned the page again. "Ah. Table 17. She pointed toward the far back, an awkward little nook near the exit doors. It wasn't even a real table, just a two-top with one chair, no name card. I gave her a thin smile, thanked her, and walked over. I could have asked questions. I could have made a scene, but I didn't. That wasn't my role in this family. I sat down, crossed my legs, and tried to breathe. Across the room, a sea of curated elegance flowed. Designer gowns, champagne glasses, practiced laughter. Cameras flashed, people hugged. No one looked at me. A waiter passed with a tray of champagne flutes. He skipped my table. It felt like sitting inside a portrait, where someone forgot to paint you in. I thought back to Jessa's 25th birthday. I had flown in from a shoot in Chicago, missing deadlines and losing a client just to make it on time. I brought her a limited edition art print, signed by the photographer she idolized in college. She didn't even unwrap it. That night, her boyfriend gave her a Cartier bracelet, and suddenly I no longer existed. Why did I even come? Maybe out of habit, maybe out of guilt, or maybe, somewhere buried deep, a desperate flicker of hope that one day I'd actually be seen. That day hadn't come, and today wasn't going to be it either. Jessa walked by in her robe, hair pinned, makeup glowing. She saw me, I know she did, but she looked right through me and kept walking. My phone buzzed. A client confirming the final approval of a magazine cover featuring my latest photo series, a milestone in my career. I locked the screen without replying. My name wasn't even printed on the seating chart. Not that they forgot. They never intended to include me. But when the appetizers came out, the message was even clearer. Across the ballroom, silver trays gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Waiters floated like clockwork, white gloves, synchronized steps, delivering artistry on plates, foie gras with berry glaze, lobster bisque in porcelain bowls, truffle risotto that smelled like money and praise. One by one, the guests at nearby tables murmured delighted reactions. At my table, The only sound was the clink of a single fork hitting porcelain. A waiter stopped beside me, avoiding my eyes. He placed a plate down, cold, unevenly arranged, and silent. It held half a dinner roll and a mess of wilted greens, maybe arugula that had seen better days. No dressing, no fork, just shame served with a side of nothing. I looked at it for a long time. The couple at table 16 glanced over, then quickly turned back to their conversation, their laughter suddenly louder. One of them whispered something. I didn't catch it, but I felt it. They fed me scraps, on purpose, not by accident, not an oversight, a decision. I'd spent years trying to convince myself that this family didn't mean to hurt me, that their distance was cluelessness, not cruelty. But this was artfully staged. They didn't want me to feel included. They wanted me to feel grateful just to be tolerated. A shadow crossed my table. "Hope everything's okay over here," Jessa said, her voice sugar-coated and echoing through her champagne smile. She wore white like it was armor, her curls pinned, her makeup flawless. I'd photographed women like her before. Women who knew exactly how to turn softness into spectacle. "We kept it simple for you," she went on, lowering her voice just slightly. "Didn't want to overwhelm. I know you're used to more laid-back stuff." My hand tightened around the edge of the table. Jessa leaned closer, almost whispering. "Smile for the camera, sis. Wouldn't want to ruin the aesthetic." Then she walked off, her heels clicking like punctuation. Her laughter dissolved into the hum of the orchestra, and I was left with the half roll and a silence more deafening than music. I pushed the plate away. The air smelled like rosemary and champagne, but I had no appetite. Not for food, not for fake kindness, not for pretending anymore. My mind drifted, pulled back to a memory I never asked to remember. Thanksgiving, 2018. I had spent the whole night before baking. A peach pie with a flaky crust, made from scratch. I drove 4 hours in traffic to be there on time. I walked in proud, offering it to Mom. She barely looked up from the stove. "Store-bought crust? Vincent, really?" "No," I said. "It's homemade." She shrugged, turned her back, and called out to Jessa, who had just posted a filtered photo of Mom on Instagram with the caption number Queen Rochelle. Rochelle's eyes sparkled. Now that's thoughtful. They ate Jessa's Instagram praise like dessert. My pie stayed untouched. I remember sitting at the end of that table, listening to them talk over me, around me. I smiled through it then. Thought maybe I was just imagining it. Now I knew better. Back in the ballroom, someone started giving a toast. I didn't hear the words. My hand moved to my purse, fingers grazing the small silver USB tucked inside the lining. It was warm against my skin, almost pulsing. I wasn't going to ruin anything today. I hadn't come here to start a fight. But maybe. I hadn't come to sit quietly either. They fed me scraps on purpose. But they don't know I brought something far less edible and far more dangerous. The message on Jessa's phone glowed like fire through glass. I wouldn't have noticed it if the guy beside me hadn't dropped his own. As he bent down to retrieve it, the screen next to mine lit up on the table. Jessa's phone, left unattended for just a moment. "Can't wait till tonight. Just remember, you're mine, wedding or not." Tobin, his name was at the top. I blinked. The world didn't tilt or crack open. It just stopped. I looked up, across the room, and there she was, Jessa, curled into Emery's side like a romantic comedy heroine. She was laughing at something he'd said. Perfect, effortless, deadly. My grip on my clutch tightened so hard it left imprints on my fingers. The phone dimmed and the moment passed, but the words were burned into me. She was cheating. No, she was cheating. With Tobin. And not just before the wedding. Tonight. The audacity. The casualness. The complete, unapologetic filth of it all. I watched as she kissed Emery on the cheek and leaned in for a selfie with his mother. And it hit me like a second slap. I wasn't just invisible to them. I was their cover. the quiet sibling, the one they used to deflect attention while they played pretend. I stood slowly, needing air, needing distance. I walked past the bar and slipped into the side hallway near the restrooms, pressing my back against the cool wall. But instead of relief, another memory clawed its way to the surface. 3 years ago, Berlin. It was going to be my breakout. A solo photography exhibition at a respected European gallery. Contracts were nearly signed, flights were being discussed. And then, radio silence. The gallery director sent a short email. Unfortunately, we are no longer able to proceed. Best of luck. I spiraled, questioned myself, blamed myself. Months later, a mentor from my graduate program pulled me aside after a panel. "Look, Vincent," she said carefully. "Someone made calls. Someone high profile. Said you were emotionally unstable, difficult to work with, not commercially viable." She didn't have to say who. Dad never cared about my work. He didn't even try to understand it. But sabotaging me? I hadn't imagined he'd go that far. And maybe that's the worst part. I hadn't imagined it. I'd trusted him, despite every sign that I shouldn't. I returned to the reception hall, numb, moving like I was underwater. At table 17, my exile corner, I sat down and stared blankly ahead. The applause around me blurred. Another toast, another self-congratulating lie. I pulled out my phone. An email had come through from the editorial team at National Photojournal. "Congratulations, Vincent. We've selected your portrait series for our spring cover. Exceptional work." My first cover. The kind of thing you tell your family about. The kind of moment they throw parties for when it's someone else. I locked my screen without replying. I looked around. Not a single face here would care. Not one person would cheer. Rochelle would say it was luck. Dad would say, "Nice hobby." Jessa? She'd probably post a selfie with I opened my clutch and stared at the small USB inside. It was cool against my fingertips. I could feel the line being drawn inside me, not in anger, not even in grief, but in truth. Clean and cold. Mom once told me, "You owe us. We've given you everything." And Jessa, during one of our last real conversations, if you could even call it that, had laughed and said, "Let's be real, Vincent. You're just background. You make the rest of us look good." They thought I was the silence that framed the picture. She wore white. I had the truth. And my truth was finally louder than their silence. Mom cornered me near the restroom. Her lipstick was perfect, her threats even more so. She'd timed it well, right before the speeches, when no one was looking. A smile on her face, hand delicately placed on my arm, voice wrapped in sugar. "Vincent, darling, let's not ruin the evening," she whispered. I said nothing. She leaned closer, breath scented with expensive perfume and polished control. "If you say or show anything tonight, consider your career done. I made one phone call before. I'll make 10 this time. Do you understand me?" I didn't flinch, but my pulse was screaming in my ears. She stepped back, smile still glued in place. "You're here as a guest, not a martyr. Keep it classy." Then she turned, heels tapping against the marble like a gavel. Case closed. I stood there, back against the cool tile, trying to steady my breath. My mother didn't scream. She sliced, and I was bleeding beneath the surface. But this wasn't new. 6 years ago, I'd landed my first gallery opportunity in Manhattan. A real one. My name on the wall. My work, raw portraits of working-class women, centered and seen. Then Rochelle called. "Change of plans," she said. "We're doing family portraits that weekend. Grandma will be in town. You know how rare that is?" "I've already committed, Mom. The gallery's confirmed." "Oh, please," she cut in. "We're your family, Vincent. This is more important than a few pictures on a wall." I canceled the show. She didn't thank me. Grandma didn't even like the photos. The gallery gave my slot to someone else. I didn't get another solo invite for over a year. That was the first time I realized, in my family, love was conditional, and sacrifice was never remembered, only expected. Back at table 17, I sat down again. The ballroom lights dimmed slightly as the MC tapped the mic. The crowd hushed. I opened my clutch and stared at the USB inside. It was still there, tucked in like a secret, like a truth too sharp to carry in my hands. Rochelle's words echoed. "You owe us!" I closed my fingers around the metal. "No," I whispered. "You owe me." I scanned the room. Jessa was glowing, sipping champagne, her dress shimmering like deceit. Dad laughed too loudly at a joke no one else heard. Rochelle nodded graciously to distant relatives, as if none of it was unraveling. A waiter leaned toward me. "Ma'am, are you all right?" "I will be," I said. He moved on. I didn't watch him go. My eyes locked on the stage. This time, I won't bow. I won't beg. I will speak. But first, let me remind you what she stole before she wore that veil. It was 3 weeks ago. I was sorting prints for a client when an email came through from a woman I hadn't heard from in years, a gallery client from LA. We'd worked together on a small campaign back in 2019. "Hey, just curious, wasn't this your shot from the Venice Boardwalk series? It's in Jessa's new press kit, no credit line." She attached a screenshot. There it was. My photo, my composition, the golden hour lighting, the color grading only I used. And front and center, Jessa, looking over her shoulder in a white dress, laughing into nothing. My art, her brand. No mention of me, no byline, no tag. I stared at the image so long my eyes watered. Then I closed the laptop and walked away. I didn't scream. I didn't call her. I just remembered. 2 years ago, I did confront her. Back when I still believed conversations could fix things. "Jessa, you used my work without permission," I said, holding up her latest magazine spread. She didn't blink. "It's just a photo, Vincent. Relax. People care about the model, not the background." The background. That word clung to me like mildew. It followed me into this wedding, into every interaction I had with them. I wasn't their sister. I was a prop, a supporting character in their curated lives. And yet I was the one who had created the image, who framed her face, who saw her through the lens, even when she refused to see me at all. Tonight, I sat quietly at table 17, the USB still inside my clutch, nestled beside a lip balm and folded tissue. The orchestra played something light and classical, perfect for a fairy tale evening. I stood. My hands were steady now. I walked toward the front of the room, toward the AV booth near the corner. The MC was reviewing a printed schedule. I stopped beside him and said simply, "There's one more story the guests need to see before the final speech." He blinked. I don't think that's on the... "It is now." He hesitated, his eyes flicking toward the stage manager. "I'm not asking," I said. "Either you cue it, or I will." He swallowed hard, then nodded slowly. "Where's the file?" I handed him the USB. As he turned toward the tech crew, I turned back to the room. A sea of faces, all pretending nothing was off-kilter, that everything was orchestrated perfectly. They didn't see the wires unraveling beneath the floor. I walked slowly back to my table, sat down, straightened my silverware, even though I wouldn't be eating. Not tonight. Across the ballroom, I saw Mom whisper something to Dad. Jessa was mid-conversation with one of the bridesmaids. She still looked flawless, still perfectly unaware. The lights flickered. The projector screen lowered. People murmured. A few heads turned. A ripple of confusion spread from table to table, a low, rustling sound of expectation. I folded my hands in my lap. This is not revenge, it's release. The screen flickered. Then the first frame appeared, and Jessa's face drained of color. Gasps rippled across the ballroom like shattered glass. The image on screen showed Jessa at her engagement party, arm in arm with Emery, both smiling for the crowd. But within seconds, the video shifted. A clip caught her stepping away, glancing at her phone, smirking as her fingers tapped quickly. Then the message appeared, crystal clear. "Tobin, can't wait till tonight. Just remember, you're mine." Wedding or not? Time-stamped, dated, undeniable. Jessa's mouth dropped open. Emery sat frozen, then slowly turned his head to look at her. I didn't need to be near them to feel the heat of his realization. He wasn't the groom. He was the shield. The next scene cut to my voice, calm, precise. They dressed me in silence. I returned the favor with clarity. Clips followed. Short, stinging. Thanksgiving. Rochelle tossing my homemade pie into the trash, saying, "Next time, buy from Whole Foods. At least their crust is consistent." A voicemail from her a year later, telling me, "We'll reschedule your show. Grandma will be in town. You know how fragile she is. Be flexible." She never rescheduled. The gallery gave the slot away. Then a call recording. Dad's voice, measured, businesslike. "She's talented, yes, but volatile. Not someone we'd trust to carry a brand. Her work's emotional, not marketable." It was his voice. No ambiguity, just sabotage dressed in professional detachment. Another cut. Jessa at a launch party, sipping wine on a rooftop, camera rolling. "She's so dramatic. I mean, art's cute and all, but we're the ones with real jobs, real lives, right?" Laughter. Then silence. The final clip zoomed in on the wedding seating chart. Table 17. One chair, no name. I stood still, letting the room inhale what I had exhaled. Emery stood slowly, lips parted, but no words. He turned to Jessa and said, barely above a whisper, "Did you ever love me?" She reached for his hand, mascara smudged and cracking. Wait!" But he stepped away. Just one step, and then another, and he was gone. The Winston matriarch rose, spine straight and voice like ice. "You tried to attach us to this disgrace?" She didn't wait for an answer. Neither did her husband. Rochelle fumbled to stand, stammering something about misrepresentation. Walter hadn't moved. He stared at the tablecloth like it had betrayed him, too. I walked to the microphone without invitation. No shaking, no smile. "You called me dramatic, difficult, disposable, but really, I was just inconvenient." My voice rang clear. "To everyone who watched and said nothing, congratulations. You no longer get to pretend. You saw it, you heard it, and you'll carry it with you." I scanned the crowd, their eyes wide, many lowering their heads. Not out of shame, but because they knew I had told the truth, and truth is heavy. "You dressed me in silence. Tonight, I wear my own voice." I stepped back. A beat of silence held. Then, one clap, two, then a wave. It wasn't thunderous. It wasn't a standing ovation. It was real. I turned, ready to leave the stage, when I heard Jessa's voice behind me, small, shaky, trying to hold on to whatever illusion she could salvage. "What did you do to me?" I didn't turn around. "I just stopped letting you do it to me. But the thing about people like my sister, they don't fall quietly. They claw, they scream, sometimes in silence, sometimes in smiles, but always in chaos." Emery stood, his expression flat, not angry, not confused, just done. He slipped the silver ring off his finger with a quiet finality and placed it on the edge of the table. "You don't even understand love," he said. "Just performance." No one breathed. Jessa's hand trembled as she reached for him, but he had already turned. No fanfare, no accusations. Just a man walking away from a staged life. The Winston matriarch rose next, her pearls stiff against her neck. "This family," she announced, "has no honor. You nearly tied us to fraud. We will not be associated with this." Her husband gave a single nod before they followed Emery out of the room. Quiet, clean exits. Surgical, devastating. Guests murmured, some in pity, some in satisfaction. A few picked up their jackets and slowly made their way toward the doors. No one was dancing anymore. Jessa collapsed into a chair. Her dress, once a symbol of everything she'd curated, now looked heavy, wrinkled, and wrong. Her makeup smeared in streaks across her cheekbones. She didn't speak. She just Sat. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from one of Jessa's former brand reps. Hi, Jessa. Due to unexpected PR circumstances, we'll be discontinuing the skincare campaign effective immediately. Another came seconds later. We need to pause all pending content. Too much exposure, not the good kind. And then her publicist, loud and blunt on speakerphone. Jessa, you're radioactive. Sponsors are pulling out fast. You need to go offline, like now. I didn't gloat. I didn't even smile. It wasn't victory, it was gravity. That's what truth does when it finally lands. I stepped into a back hallway, needing air. Instead, I got Rochelle. She blocked my way, clutching a drink in one hand, mascara flaking beneath her eyes, rage sharpened by embarrassment. You humiliated us, she hissed. You humiliated your sister. Is this what you wanted? To destroy your family? No, I said. I just wanted to be treated like your daughter. Her eyes narrowed. You always make everything about you. Walter's voice broke through from behind her. Enough. He stepped forward, his tone low but unshakable. This family broke a long time ago, Rochelle. Vincent just stopped pretending. She stared at him, stunned, like she didn't recognize the man standing beside her. Neither did I. And yet, somehow, in that moment, he looked more human than he ever had. Rochelle didn't speak again. She turned, tossed the drink onto a nearby table, and walked out. Guests were now openly leaving. A few offered me nods, some respectful, some just awkward. The ones who stayed were quiet. The ones who left would carry the story in whispers. I returned to table 17. The USB was still there, tucked under a napkin. Empty now. All of its secrets spilled, and none left to keep. I held it in my hand and closed my fingers around it. My body felt light. Not triumphant, not even proud, just unchained. I looked around the room. My sister slouched in a chair like the air had left her lungs. Rochelle was gone. Walter stood by a window, arms folded, watching a world he'd built crack and sink. I didn't win, but I ended the game. The next morning, my mother called me. Not to apologize, to beg. Her voice was scratchy, thin, trying to sound steady. I think we all said things we didn't mean, she offered. I didn't respond. Can we meet? Just talk. Please, Vincent. I closed my eyes and breathed in slowly. I recognized the tone. Not remorse, desperation. She didn't want to make peace. She wanted to contain the fallout. I've already said what I needed to, I told her. Publicly. There was a pause. Then, quieter. We've reflected, Walter and I. We want to move forward as a family. Your version of family isn't something I need anymore. Click. Later that week, I received a letter in the mail. Handwritten, unusually neat for my father. It didn't say, I'm sorry, it said, we hope someday you'll understand what we tried to do. That was the last time I heard from either of them. And honestly, that was enough. I didn't need a reconciliation. I needed a release. And I had found it. But not everything that ends stays gone. It was a rainy Tuesday in March when Jessa showed up at the front door of my studio. No makeup. Hair pulled back. Jacket soaked. I'm not here to explain, she said. Good, I replied. I need work. I stood in the doorway for a long time. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her heels were gone. Her voice no longer held knives. You know, I said, you could have called first. I didn't think you'd pick up. She wasn't wrong. I let her in. The studio smelled like paint and varnish. The floors were clean. My assistant Caleb was editing prints in the back room. Jessa stood awkwardly in the front gallery space, surrounded by portraits of strangers who had trusted me more in minutes than she had in 30 years. I don't need you to forgive me, she said. I need to start over. I believed her, not fully, but enough to take a risk. Pause. Long pause. I studied her face. Not for beauty this time, for intent. You'll show up early, I said. You'll clean everything. You'll be invisible for a while. She nodded. And you'll earn your way into the frame this time. That night, I stood on the rooftop of the studio. The city was soft below me, breathing in shadows and streetlights. Caleb joined me, mug of tea in his hand. So, he asked, what's your next project? I thought for a moment. The wind tugged at my sleeves. Portraits of rebirth, I said, but not from ashes, from clarity. And yet, clarity doesn't mean the wound is gone. I stood alone on the rooftop of my studio, the Brooklyn skyline soft in the distance, city lights flickering like quiet thoughts. The air was cool, but not cold. Spring was somewhere between the buildings, still deciding if it wanted to stay. In my hand was an old photo I hadn't looked at in years. Me and Jessa. I was maybe 10. She, 12. She stood front and center in a white ballet costume, hair in curls, perfect posture. I was in the background, slightly out of focus, cropped at the shoulder, smiling like I wasn't supposed to be there. I traced the edge of the picture with my thumb. They never saw me clearly, but I do. Inside the studio, Caleb was muttering about a crooked frame. I could hear the sound of tape being pulled, the soft thump of a print being adjusted. "Hey, Vincent," he called. "This one's a little off, but I think it's honest." I laughed. Good, leave it that way. Guests were starting to arrive for the opening night of my new series, Reborn in Focus. Some were collectors, some were friends, all were chosen. Liana brought over a tray of sparkling water and tiny lemon cookies. Someone cued music, something soft and simple, and in the middle of the room, someone raised a glass. "To the family you make," they said. Everyone echoed it. Glasses clinked. I stood in the center of the photo this time, not because I asked to be there, but because they pulled me in. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of Jessa. She was quietly sweeping near the back corner, where guests wouldn't notice her. She didn't look up. She didn't expect applause. And she didn't run. Later, when the last guest had left and silence returned like an old friend, I checked my phone. One new voicemail. "Vincent, it's your mother. I know you don't owe us anything, but I hope someday you'll forgive me. Not for me. For you." I didn't delete it, but I didn't call back either. Some things aren't meant to be repaired. Just remembered, then released. I walked to my private workspace in the back. The walls smelled faintly of varnish and steel. My favorite chair creaked as I sat down. Across from me, centered perfectly on the wall, was a new photograph. Black and white. My own face. Sharp. Bold. Unapologetic. Underneath, handwritten in ink. Truth. Framed by my own hand. No more asking to be seen. No more waiting for a seat. I built the table. Maybe you saw a piece of yourself in me. Maybe you've spent years shrinking at the edge of someone else's story, waiting for a seat, waiting to be enough, waiting to be seen. But here's what I've learned, and I say this as someone who's walked through silence, shame, and survival. You don't need their permission to matter. You don't need to keep bleeding just because they call it family. And you sure as hell don't need to sit at a table where your name is missing. You can build your own. I did. Not out of revenge, but out of truth, out of clarity, out of the quiet kind of love we offer ourselves when no one else will. So now I'm asking you, what truth have you been swallowing for too long? What story is still stuck in your throat, waiting to be told? If this story stirred something in you, let me know in the comments. Drop a 1 if this hit home, or tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to know. And hey, if this wasn't your thing, I respect that too. Tell me what didn't land for you and where you're tuning in from. This space is for real people, real stories. So if you believe in truth, growth, and the kind of endings that don't always come with closure, but come with freedom, then subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching. Take care of your story.